Dick went in right at his hairline, exited directly behind that. Jesse looked at coward Adam Lanza in the eyes, saw his face, and he looked at the end of that barrel. Jesse didn't run. Jesse didn't turn his back. That was the fatal shot that killed Jesse.
Neil Heslin, father of Sandy Hook victim Jesse, talking so movingly today on Capitol Hill. I'm back now with John Lott, Jr. Mr. Lott, do you know how many mass shootings there have been in the last 30 years in America?
I mean, I've written papers on it. I couldn't tell you exactly over 30 years. But
okay, it's about 63. And do you know which
I think there's
weapons?
More than that.
Well, it may be as many as 65, including this year. But this is up to the end of 2012.
You're talking
mass
about
shooting being defined by mass shooting being defined by the FBI as more than 4 people shot dead. So if we agree on that as the terminology,
I think you're using the Mother
weapons...
Jones article. But look,
okay, do you know? Let me ask you a question. Do you know what weapons were used in those mass shootings?
Yeah, I mean, there's been a range of weapons that have been used, everything from handguns to hunting rifles to things you call assault weapons. But the point is, these assault weapons.
Well, the point is this: there've been 71 semi-automatic handguns, 28 rifles, 23 revolvers, 21 shotguns. But here's the point. Of the 143 weapons used in those mass shootings, 62 would be outlawed by the assault weapons ban of 2013. So this is a very specific campaign to try and remove from public civilian usage and availability the type of weapon being used to slaughter Americans. What I don't understand from all the expertise that you bring to this is that I don't want to put words in your mouth, but of all the 35 proposals President Obama has put forward, which ones would you actually agree with in terms of introducing more gun safety in America?
Okay. Before I get to that question, which I will get to, I want to go and deal with the points that you were just raising, and that was, it's just not me. You look at the National Academy of Sciences in 2004, they looked at all the academic studies that have been done, and they could not find any evidence that the types of bans that you're talking about have reduced any type of violent crime. You look at the studies funded by the Clinton administration. They could not find any evidence that those types of bans have
Let me give you some. Let me give you some. Let me give you some.
Academic.
Let me give you some, Mr. Lott. You've just said what you said. Let me answer you. In 1996, as you know, there was a horrendous mass shooting in Australia, in Hobart. 35 people killed. They brought in extensive gun control and gun bans in Australia. In the period leading up to that, in the 10-year period, there were 18 mass shootings in Australia. Do you know how many there have been since the gun ban was brought in?
Well, depends how you define them. I know the way you're going to define them.
Actually, it's very easy to define. More than 4 people killed in a shooting. Do you know how many there have been in Australia since they brought in the gun ban?
Okay. Do you know how many? You know how many there's been in New Zealand?
Can you answer my question first? Then we'll move on to supplementaries.
Well, the way you define it, you're going to say it's 0. But
how many mass shootings have there been in a country that before they had a massacre and changed their laws, they had 18?
Yeah,
how many have there been since 1996?
Okay. No, you're going to let me talk for a second. The point is...
Answer the question.
I just did. If you look at New Zealand...
How many since 96?
I already said...
I haven't heard your answer.
I've already said a couple times. I said the way you define it, it's 0. But the point is...
So just to clarify,
no, sir,
you agree with me that in a country that brought in extensive gun control and gun bans following 18 mass shootings culminating in 35 people being slaughtered, there have been zero mass shootings since. Here's my second question.
No. You can't go and ask 3 or 4 questions at once. You've made
I'm asking you my questions.
Statements. Let me
you
respond.
are to answer my questions, not the ones that suit you and your agenda.
No.
Let me ask you a second question.
Wait a second, sir.
You don't have to answer it, Mr. Lott, but I will ask you this question.
Me answer.
Because it's very important for the premise of your argument. Let me ask you this question. In the same year, in 1996, I'm going to keep talking, so I suggest you keep quiet. In 1996, in the same year as the Hobart Massacre in Australia, in Dunblane in Scotland, as you know, 16 children of a similar age to Sandy Hook were slaughtered by a mass shooter. As a result, Britain brought in handgun bans, semi-automatic bans and other bans. I want to ask you one question again. How many shootings, not mass shootings, individual shootings, have there been at British schools since Dunblane and since the gun bans were brought in following Dunblane, since 1996? Do you know?
There was one before, and there haven't been any after.
No, I'm just asked you one question.
And
how
I answered the question.
At a school,
Look,
how many shootings at a school have there been?
Sir,
are you agreeing with me that there have been zero?
Can I ask
Zero, zero, zero. Not 5, not 10. Zero shootings at a school in Britain since we brought in a gun ban. So you now have two countries because you're trying to change the question to one that suits you. And I'm trying to tell you, as the man who tells America more guns, less crime, that in countries where they have brought in gun control following massacres like Sandy Hook, they have seen zero mass shootings in one country, zero school shootings in another. That is my point to you, Mr. Lott.
Okay. How about Germany? Germany has even stricter laws than Australia has. And up until Newtown, they had 2 of the 3 worst public school shootings in the world. They had occurred despite these regulations that were there.
What's the average gun murder rate in Germany for the last 10 years? Do you know?
Pardon?
What
in
is
the last 10 years, they had the 2 in the last 10 years. They had the
How many in the last 10 years have been killed by guns in Germany?
Germany had both of their shootings in the last 10 years.
No, I asked you how many people have been murdered with guns in Germany in the last 10 years. Do you know?
Again, what you have
you cited Germany. Do you know the answer to the country you've raised as an example of proof of your argument? The answer is you don't know. Germany averages 50 gun murders a year. America averages 12,000 gun murders a year, Mr. Lott.
What's the point of having anybody on? Here's the deal.
You mentioned Germany,
you bring up school shootings,
I
respond to school shootings, and then you go on to something else without letting me finish. So
I finally get the answers to the questions I ask you. The deal is it's my show, and I ask you the questions. Now, you're the man that wants to tell people like Neil Hezlin that the answer to what happened to his son is more guns in America.
I have let you make many sentences here. You've talked most of the time, both before and after the break. So let me just try to deal with a couple things. One of the things you have a hard time understanding is the difference between levels and changes, okay? Countries differ in terms of murder rates for many reasons. So if we just take your German question about how many murders there are in Germany, Germany has relatively few murders. Switzerland has even fewer murders than Germany has. But the point is that Germany also had fewer murders, had even lower murders before they had the gun control rules that they had. The murders in UK, the murders in Germany, the murders in other countries have gone up after you've had bans put in place. And that seems to me pretty important.
You see, again, Mr. Lott, you are quoting statistics that suit your agenda, but the reality in Britain is
you just asked me about Germany having a lower murder rate.
In the 5-year period in Britain after Dunblane, there was a spike. And then, as you know, when the full impact of the gun ban came in the last 8 consecutive years in Britain, it has fallen, as you well know.
And
you know that's a fact.
Look, sir. First of all, it soared for the next 7 years. Britain had an 18% increase in the number of police in the country at that point, and that helped drive it down. But despite having 18% more police, the murder rate in Britain is still higher now than it was before you had the handgun ban. Why is it still higher?
How many people were murdered in Britain last year with guns?
Look, the point is it was even lower before you had the ban.
You are citing the murder rate in Britain.
It's about a third. The murder rate in Britain is about a third what it is in the United States. But the point is it was even lower relative to the United States.
What an absolute lie. How many people were murdered in Britain last year by guns? How many?
It makes much more sense to talk about murder rates, to deal with differences in population.
Tell me how many people were... We are talking about guns.
I don't memorize number of murders.
How many people...
No, I'm talking
allow
about
me to introduce you to a hard fact.
So you don't care about the total number of people who died?
In 2011, in England and Wales, 39 people were killed with guns. In the same year in America, 11,000 were murdered with guns. 18,000 killed themselves with guns.
Well, let me give you a couple of statistics about the United States.
Were hit with gunfire, Mr. Lott.
Do you know that 78% of the counties in the United States have 0 murders in any given year? And that 3% of the counties account for over 70% of the murders? Where do you think the gun ownership is heaviest? The gun ownership is heaviest in those 78% of the counties that have 0 murders. The gun ownership is lowest.
Do you believe in universal background checks for all guns in America?
In theory, if you could fix the problems with the current background system, that would be great. Unfortunately, about 95% of those people who are denied as a result of background checks are false positives. It's people who, mistakes being made in the system because somebody has similar names. It's like Ted Kennedy getting on the no-fly list 5 times because there's somebody else that they want to deny who has the same name. But, you know, for many people, that may simply be an inconvenience. But when you're talking about 1.7 million initial denials there, you're talking about a significant, if small, number of people who are being threatened, who need to get a gun quickly for self-defense in order to save their lives. And that delay makes the difference between whether or not they're going to be safe or not and defend themselves.
Okay. The final question before we go, just you didn't answer earlier, but of the 35 proposals for gun safety that the President is trying to bring in, how many of the 35 do you support?
I don't think I supported any of the ones that he had. I mean, a lot of them weren't real proposals.
You don't support any of them?
Well, a lot of them weren't real proposals. I mean, sure, I think there should be a head of the BATF. He's let a nomination lag for a couple years without appointing somebody. Sure, he should appoint somebody. That's one thing that I think would be useful to do. There are a couple other things like that. Having people go and study certain issues are fine. But most of those things weren't really serious things that were going to go and solve anything, were they?
Okay, well, they are pretty serious if you're the father of a boy who's been
Look, I have 5 kids.
Mr. Lott, we have to...
I have 5 kids. I can't imagine losing any of them for any reason. What you need to do sometimes is have shows about people who saved their lives, like these 10 cases in just this last month of December, where people had to fire multiple shots in order to save lives.
Mr. Lott, thank you for joining me again. I look forward to talking to you again about this. As you know, I disagree with you passionately, but I respect your right to